Give me just a second. I'll start there. Okay. So let's start. On Monday, on Monday, we worked on the code. On Monday, we worked on the Python code to terminate any EC2 instance we create in our account that has SSH open to the world. The point of that project is just to enlighten you guys on how to use Python to script different things in AWS. So when you are starting out, you don't have to take on a big project. What I recommend is starting with small projects just to help you build the momentum so you see how things work. Then from there, you can take the project and expand on that project and work on another project that may be a little bit more complex. So what we worked on is a little bit complex in a way in terms of when we get the response from AWS and we have to sort through the data to extract exactly what we need out of it. So it gets complex in that aspect, but for the most part, the problem we are trying to solve is very simple. This is something I've seen implemented in one of the projects I've worked in before, where there was a security measure that was put in place just not to allow anyone to launch any EC2 instance that SSH is open to the world. So in that, on Monday, we wrote this code. The video is on YouTube. If you guys missed it, you can watch the video on how we wrote this code. And this code would pretty much scan our AWS account, get a list of security groups we have in our AWS account, get a list of security groups that SSH is open to the world. Then we'll also scan our AWS account, get a list of our EC2 instances. We will compare the security groups that is attached to those EC2 instances to the security groups we've scanned in our account that SSH is open to the world. If there is a match, then we would terminate the EC2 instance. So that is pretty much what this code does. And one of the main things that I also wanted to point out when we worked on this project is beyond just writing a code that works, that allows you to scan your AWS account and you can script different things in your AWS account. The main thing that I was also sharing with you guys in that project is just the documentation, how to reference the documentation, just understanding it from the documentation standpoint, because I've always said your job as a cloud engineer is more than creating things. You are solving problems. So I don't want you guys to underestimate the part of solving problem. And how you solve problem is just being able to do research, understanding where to look for certain informations that you are looking for, and understanding how to read the documentation and understand what the documentation is saying and how to use the information in the documentation to accomplish what you are trying to accomplish. That is one of the main things that I was sharing in that project that we were working on. So I see this all the time where when you guys are working on your project, a majority of everyone working on the project is always focused on getting the project done and seeing the website at the end. And I'm always saying getting the project done and seeing the website at the end to me, is like 25% of the project. The main point of the project is you understanding anything that we are implementing, where does it come from? If we run a Linux command, why are we running this command? What does this command do? For everything we work on the project, there are concepts, right? And you understanding that concept is the main thing about that project. And that stands for, and that covers understanding where to get the information from a documentation standpoint, understanding when you deploy something, what you did and how it works, and understanding how to troubleshoot any issues you face. I don't want you guys to underestimate that part of your project, because trust me, you really need that when you start working as a cloud engineer. It is more than just being able to deploy something. So the point of this project is to show you how to write the code from the ground up. We could have used ChatGPT, but what good is it if we just generate the code and we know the code works, but you actually don't understand where all the information came from? So that's the main point why I decided to work on this project. And we'll finish this project today. And once we finish this project, the next project I want to work on is something with generative AI. AWS has new service they released that has all this generative AI, different modules you can use to do different things. I haven't pinpointed exactly what we will use the generative AI to solve, but I'm still thinking about it. And if you guys have an idea on a cool project we can work on using generative AI, let me know. Then we can start the first phase of it, which is research. So even when we come up with what we want to work on, we are not just going to jump straight to writing codes or whatever we need to do. There is always research where we'll find the documentations, find a list of things we need, write them down before we can start going into implementing. So that's the next project I want to work on. And I'm very excited about that project, because now that AI is pretty much getting bigger and bigger, I can definitely see companies requiring you to have that skill set. So instead of waiting for the time where the skill sets will be required, it's better that you stay a couple of steps ahead and start learning how to use whatever service AWS has for generative AI to complete different projects. So for some of you, I noticed that you guys are more advanced now. You have completed all the projects we have in our account, and you understand Docker, Terraform, and things like that. So if you want to take your knowledge a step further, that's what you need to do. Okay, so let's start with this project. This is where we finished this code, and this code works. So if I go in the AWS account, in my AWS account here, and I launch an EC2 instance, I'm going to just call it test, and I'll launch maybe 5 EC2 instances. I'll pick my AMI, so all these are the same. I'm just going to select my keypad there. And for the network, I'm going to allow SSH from the world, right? That's unchecked it. So here I am allowing SSH from anywhere in the world, which is something you shouldn't allow, because you can see here AWS also gives you the warning that you shouldn't do this. So, but to test my code, I'm going to allow SSH from the world. And here, that is all the settings we need. I'm going to launch my EC2 instances. So I've launched the EC2 instance. I'm going to check it out. I'll remove this. And we have 5 EC2 instances, right? The next thing I'm going to do is just wait for this EC2 instance to pass the status check. Well, not pass the status check. I'll wait for the state of this EC2 instance to change to running. Okay, the state of the EC2 instance is now running. So if I test my code, I already know this code works. So if you guys watch the video we did on Monday on how to generate this code, you understand why we are creating the code in Jupyter Notebook and we ran each cell one by one. So I know my code works. So now if I run all this code, right, I click run all here in Jupyter Notebook and it has run all the code. You can see here if I scroll down, I don't have any error. It ran all the code. So everything ran successfully. Now, if I go back to my AWS console and I refresh here, you can see my EC2 instances are terminated. This is definitely something you would, especially those of you that want to work as a security engineer, or even if you want to work as a data engineer, working with Python and understanding how to filter things from your response would help you a lot in those roles. But this particular project will help you a lot if you are looking for like a cloud, if you are looking for a cloud security engineer role and you need to explain and you want to showcase some of the projects you've worked on, how you can script different security related things in AWS. This is a good project you can use. Okay, so I know my code works. In today's session, why can't I speak today? In today's session, what we want to do is hook this code up to a Lambda function. So that way we can auto.
Sorry, I have a question. Sorry for cutting you short. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
go ahead. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, sorry, I just went from somewhere, so I missed this project. But I actually understand the introduction. So, is this only targeted to like you know, uh, EC2 instances or like termination of EC2 instances, not other core AWS services, right?
Yes, this is only EC2 instance.
Okay, okay. That's all. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so this code works, right? And the point of today is what we want to accomplish today is hook this code up to a Lambda function because you guys saw that I had to manually trigger this code to run it. But let's say you are an engineer and you've gone home for the day or whatever the case may be, you don't know when people will be launching EC2 instances in your AWS account. So instead of running our code manually, we have to hook it up to a Lambda function that will automatically run the code when someone launch an EC2 instance. So that is what we are going to do today. So to start, once you've created your code in Jupyter Notebook, I recommend creating your code in Jupyter Notebook because you can run it one cell at a time to make sure as you are writing the code, it works before you export it and upload it into Lambda. My code works. So the next thing I'm going to do is export my code out of the Jupyter Notebook format and export it into Python format. So that's the first step. To do that, in Jupyter Notebook in Visual Studio Code, all you have to do is click on these three dots here, then click Export. And here, select Python script, and it is going to export it into Python format for you. At least this is Python format. We have to do a little bit cleanup. So where we have this hashtag %%, we can remove that. To remove it, what you can do is select it, right? Once you select it, press Control F if you are using a Windows computer. And if you are using a Mac computer, you press Command F, right? That is going to find every instance on your file that has that hashtag %%. Then press the drop down here. And under replace, we are not going to add anything here because we want to find every instance on our file that has that, and we don't want to replace it with anything. You can see here, it found 21 instances on my file that has that. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to remove that by if you click this icon here, that will replace all of the instances. And if you click this one, the first one, it will replace it one at a time. So you'd have to click it 21 times. But if you want to replace it all at once, just click this and it will remove everything. So that is the first thing we want to do. Then I'm just going to clean up my files a little bit. So here I'm going to remove the extra space between them. So for this part where we are printing something out, we don't really need that. And that is not how you print something in Python. So where we have this, because in Jupyter Notebook, we can just type the name of the variable and it will print it. So how Python works, I think you have to have print there. So we don't need this part. So I'm just going to remove every instances where I have that. So I have it here. I'm going to remove that. And if you want to make it easier, you can also remove it in Jupyter Notebook before you export it to Python. So I'll remove this. And
sorry, just to confirm, the reason why we initially had this in the code was just to verify that it's working, right?
Exactly, yes. So as we are working on it in Jupyter Notebook here, right? Before you write your next piece of code, you can print it out so you can see what your JSON file looks like. So that way you can plan how you need to write your next code. So we're just printing things out to verify that our code is working as intended. Okay, so I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to remove this. And also this here. And this. Also, this is the last one. So I'm going to remove this as well. So I'm just removing where we were printing those things out. And just to make sure I haven't made any mistake when I was deleting this. Okay, so this looks fine. I'm just reviewing the code one more time, just to make sure that everything is fine. Okay, so everything looks fine. Once you have cleaned up your code, the next thing we are going to do is save it. I'm just going to save this. I'm going to click Save As, and I'll save it in the same project folder. So in this project folder, I'll call it the same name. But instead of the extension IPYNB, I'm going to call it PY for Python. So Python extension is PY. So I'm going to save it there, and you can now see the code here. Just to verify that this code works again, I'm going to test it by launching new EC2 instances. I'm just going to launch two EC2 instances this time. So I wait for those EC2 instances to pass the status check. Well, not pass the status check. I'll wait for the EC2 instance state to be running. Then I'll run my code again. The EC2 instance is running. So I'm going to come back to my Python code. And here I'm going to right click in my project folder. You guys know the same thing we do in our Terraform project. You right click anywhere in your project folder and open the terminal from there. So I'm going to open integrated terminal, and I'm going to run this Python code. To run the Python code, you have to type Python space. you can type period, backslash, and the name of the script you want to run. The name of the Python script is check sg.py. So I'll type check. So once you start to type part of it, once you start to type part of the name, if you press the tab key, it should auto-complete it for you. But because I have two files that are different, because I have two files that are the same name but different extension, it is picking the wrong extension. I'm just going to remove the IPYNB there. I'm just going to type py. So this is how you will run the script on your computer. Then press enter. It has successfully run the script. I didn't get any error. So if everything works as intended in my AWS account, I'm going to click refresh here. You can see my 2:2 instance is shutting down. The reason why we are testing our Python script is because that is the script we are going to upload into the Lambda function. You could easily make mistakes when you are converting it from Jupyter Notebook to Jupyter Notebook to Python script. So after you've converted to Python, it is always a good practice to test it one more time, just to make sure that your script is still working. So that's the next step. We've test the script and it works. Go ahead, Titus.
I just wanted to say,
Your voice is very low. I can barely hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was saying that just to run that Python code, if we click on that tab 2 times, it will find the next file. That's what I was saying. Yeah, to run the Python script, because we have 2 files with different extension. If you start writing and then just hit the tab 2 times, it should jump back to the one with .py.
Okay,
that's what I was saying.
See, I didn't even know that. Okay, thank you. So, yeah. So you're saying if I start typing the name, and I press tab and I press tab again. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Thank you. So what it's saying is, since I have the files in this directory with the same name, I didn't even have to manually remove the extension. So once I press the tab key and I keep pressing the tab key, it will keep toggling through all the files that has the same extension. Thank you. I didn't know that. We learn something new every day. So, okay. I'm not going to run the script anymore because I've already run it and I know it works. So for some reason, it is slowing down. Okay. All right. So I know my script works. The next thing I'm going to do is, once you've tested your script and you know your script works, the next thing we are going to do is package this script so we can upload it into Lambda, right? When you package your script and you are uploading it into Lambda, Lambda expects you to have it wrapped up in a function. And I'm not the best at Python and understanding everything you need to do, but I just understand from a documentation standpoint, your code has to be in a Lambda handler function. And all you have to do is just up here in your code, where after you don't have to wrap this import in Lambda, in the Lambda handler, but everything else that's running your code, you need to add it to the Lambda handler. So here, we are going to type the Lambda handler function, and it goes like this. It's def and Lambda underscore handler. I just want to make sure I'm typing it right. Then in parentheses, you have event, comma, context, then outside of the function, you're going to have your colon. So you guys please also verify it for me, make sure that I'm typing the right thing. So it is dev lambda underscore handler, right? then it's events, comma, context. So this is what Lambda expects. Once you have the function, right, all you have to do is select your code that is right under it. Select everything. Then press the tab key. Just press the tab key once. So I press the tab key and it tabbed my code in that function. That is all we need to do. Then here, I'm going to remove this extra space at the end. And yes, this is what our code needs to look like when we upload it into Lambda. I'm going to save my file. Once I save my file, the next thing I'm going to do is zip this code so that way I can upload it into Lambda. To zip it, right, the best thing I always do is, I don't think you can zip it here. Let me see. So to zip it, this is a project folder on my computer. So I'll just go to where I have that project on my computer. Just a second, let me get the file. I have all this open. Let me close this. This is the project folder on my computer. So come to the project folder on your computer, open it, and this is the Python script. So I have two files in it. If you see, these two files are what you are seeing in Visual Studio Code. I have two files in it, and I only need to zip the Python one. So I'm going to right click on the Python file. You can tell it is a Python file. On that type, you can see Python source file. I'm going to right click on it and send it to compress zip folder. So I've zipped that folder, and in that folder, I've zipped the Python script in this folder. The next thing I'm going to do is go into my AWS account, and I'm going to create an S3 bucket and upload that zip folder in that S3 bucket. So here, I'm going to type S3 in the search box. Create a bucket. I'll call it the name. I'll just give it the same name of the project. So check SG bucket. Yeah, I'll call it that. Oh, let me put my initials in the beginning. So right. Then you select the region you want to create the bucket in. I'll use Northern Virginia region. And all you have to do is scroll down and click create bucket. Once you've created the bucket, see the details of that bucket by clicking view details. And once you are in that bucket, you can upload your zip file in it. This is the zip file on my computer. To upload it into this S3 bucket, all you have to do is click and hold it, drag and drop it here. So you see, if I click and hold it here and drag and drop it, while you have to be in the S3 bucket. You can see I'm in the S3 bucket. So now if I click and hold, drag and drop, it is going to upload the zip file in the S3 bucket, and I'll click upload. So that's the next thing we need to do, upload the file into the S3 bucket. Then once we have uploaded the file into the S3 bucket, the next thing we will do is we are pretty much ready to create our Lambda function. But before we create our Lambda function, we have to create an IAM role that will give Lambda access to the EC2 service, because the code we are running with this Lambda function, the code that this Lambda function will run would be doing things with EC2. So we need to allow Lambda to have access to EC2. So to create the code, right? I mean, to create the IAM role, I'm going to go to the IAM service and select roles, click create role, and the trusted entity type is going to be AWS service. And under use case, select this drop down and select Lambda and click next. On add permissions, we are going to give it EC2 access. So here I'm going to type EC2 and let's select Amazon EC2 full access. That's all we need to add to it. Then scroll down and click next. And give it a name. I'll call it the same name of the project, check SG row. And once you've given the row a name, scroll down and click create row. I've successfully created the row. Now that we have created the IAM row, the next thing we are going to do is create our Lambda function. To create your Lambda function, type Lambda here. And select Lambda under services. Create your function. To create your function, click create function. And we are going to author from scratch. And under function name, we are going to give it a name. I'll call it the same name, check SG. The name doesn't really matter. You can call it any name that you want. Since I call this project Check Security Group, which is a terrible name for this project, but I'm just sticking to it at this point. I'll call the Lambda function check SG Lambda. Then under runtime, this is where you select the language of code you want to run. Since our code is written in Python, I'm going to select this drop down and select Python 3. This is the latest version of Python that Lambda is currently running. So I'll select Python 3.12. And under architecture, we'll leave it at 8664. Then I'm going to select this drop down under change default execution rule. And I'm going to use an existing role. Then if I select this drop down, I should see the role I created. I'm going to select it. And I believe that's all I need to do here for this Lambda function. So all this, we don't have to enable any of this, and click create function. We have successfully created the Lambda function. Then the next thing we need to do is add our code to this Lambda function. Before we add our code to this Lambda function, I'm going to, when you create a Lambda function, it always comes with this default code, and you can see the function that I told you that Lambda expects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this code. This is the code in that Lambda function folder, right? This is the code. I'm going to delete this code because we don't need it. We are going to upload our code into it. Once you have deleted the code, then while you are in the code tab, you can click upload from, then Amazon S3 location. Then here it expects the S3 link URL. So let's go back to the S3 console. In this tab, I'm going to type S3 and select S3 under services. And I'll look for the bucket I created. This is the bucket. And I'll select the zip file in the bucket. And this is the object URL. So all you have to do is click this box to copy it. And if you also look in the hint here where it is telling you the value you are supposed to upload, you can see it is expecting something with HTTPS. Sometimes if you guys don't know what you need to add in there, so AWS always gives you a hint. And if you look, it matched what we have here. So once you copy it from there, paste it in here. And once you paste it, click save. And click OK here. we have upload our code into the Lambda function. And if I double click it here, you'll see it. This is the code. So everything looks exactly how we want it. So once you have uploaded the code, the next thing we need to do is, I believe the name of the code here, whatever the name of your code is, you have to change the Lambda handler settings to match the name of the code. So the name of my code is checksg.py, right? So while you are still in the code tab, if you scroll down here, under runtime settings, you would also see the Lambda handler here. So we need to edit this one and change this name, leave the Lambda handler there, but the first name before the period, we want to change it to the name of our code. The name of our script file is checksg. You don't have to put the py at the end. It's just the name without the extension. It is called checksg. Once I change it there, I'm going to save it. So again, just to show you, the name of my script is checksg. And if I scroll down here under the handler, that is the same thing I entered before the, that's what I entered for the handler. Once you have done that, the next thing we need to do is, once you have updated this setting, the next thing we need to do is now hook it up to a trigger, because we have our Lambda function, right? We've uploaded the code. Now we need to add something that will trigger this code. For this project, what we will use for this project, the trigger we will use is CloudWatch EventBridge. So that's just like a CloudWatch event that AWS has for the Lambda function, that we can pick a specific event type that whenever that event happens, then that EventBridge will trigger the Lambda function and run our code. And for us, we are going to pick specifically when an EC2 instance state goes from, because you guys know when you launch an EC2 instance, it starts at pending, and from pending it goes to running. So anytime you launch new EC2 instance, even if an EC2 instance was stopped and it is restarted, it would go to running. So we are going to check every EC2 instance that is going to running state, and we will use that event to trigger our Lambda function. So here, I'm going to click Add Trigger. And for the trigger source, I'm going to select this drop down and scroll down here and select EventBridge. For the EventBridge, we are going to create a new rule. So here, click Create New Rule. Then give the rule a name. I'm going to just call it the same name, check security group. Once you've given the rule a name, I'll use the same name as the description. But obviously, when you are working on your function, you can enter a bit more descriptive description here. Then under rule type, we are going to choose event pattern. Then here, we are going to select this drop down and pick EC2. Then then for this next option, select this drop down, and we want to select the EC2 instance state change, because remember the state is when it is pending or running. So we'll click this, right? Then we are going to check this detail, and you can see the detail right here. These instances is if you want to pick a specific instance in your AWS account, you can see if I check this, it will ask you to add the instance ID, right? But we want to pick the state. So once you pick the state, you'll be able to select this drop down and you can pick the different state of your EC2 instance. Here, we are going to pick running. So basically what this is saying is we want to set a rule that checks for whenever an EC2 instance is going into the running state. And whenever that happens, EventBridge is going to trigger the Lambda function. The Lambda function will be triggered and it will run our code. So once you select that here, that's all we need to do here for the trigger. Then click add. We have successfully added the trigger. And the next thing I'm going to do is change the timeout. So another thing I want to mention is I want to thank Adewale for his note. He actually worked on this after we worked on it on Monday, and I told you guys to go work on it. He worked on it, and when I was configuring it, I was using his notes to test it out. So which is why I said, like, sometimes your job as a cloud engineer would also be you. It might not even be you implementing something. Like, I have a task at work now. All I have to do is go do a research on something and come back and teach the team how it works and explain to them how we can implement it. So sometimes your job as a cloud engineer may not even be you. The task that is assigned to you may not be implementing something. It will just be doing research and teaching your team how to use that particular service. So I definitely appreciate your note. Thank you. So here, once we've set our trigger, the next thing we are going to do is, which is the last thing, we have to change the timeout of the Lambda function, because I believe the default timeout is set to 3 seconds. So on the configurations tab, click general configuration. So you can see right here, the Lambda timeout is 3 seconds. So we can edit it here. And I'm going to scroll down here on that timeout and just change the timeout from 3 seconds to 1 minute. Then click save. Okay, and that's all we need to do. So if I've done everything right, the Lambda function is deployed in my account. It is ready, and this is a security measure I have implemented in my account. Now, when anyone launches an EC2 instance in my account, if the EC2 instance is open to the world, if SSH on the EC2 instance is open to the world, then the Lambda function should be triggered and the EC2 instance should be terminated automatically. So let's test that. I'm going to go back to my EC2 console here. And I'm going to launch 10 EC2 instances just to test this. I call it then I'll pick the normal settings we always pick. I open these EC2 instances on SSH to the world. And here I'm just going to launch 10 of them. Then I'm going to click launch instance. I've launched 10 EC2 instances. Let's go in the account and so we can see them. These are the EC2 instances. I'm going to remove this so we can see all of it. And so you can see them here. The thing is, AWS leaves the one we terminated before, but the new EC2 instance, you can see them here. These are them. Right now, their state is pending, but soon as their state changed to running, the Lambda function should trigger and it will just remove them immediately and terminate them. So I'm going to click refresh here. You can see we didn't even get to see it running because now those same EC2 instances are shutting down. That's because as soon as the state changed, the Lambda function got triggered and the code ran and it is terminating the EC2 instance. So sometimes when you guys are at work and you are trying to do certain things in your AWS account, or then this, it could be, well, like I said, I've worked on a project where this was implemented, where you are trying to do something, but you notice that when you launch an EC2 instance, it gets terminated, right? This could be one of the ways it is implemented. So that is the main thing I wanted to cover in this project. Go ahead, Wyatt.
Can we look at the logs for the Lambda function just to see if it should print something regarding the instances that it terminated? I think so.
I don't think it would print anything for the EC2 instances, but I
No,
can
not for the EC2 instance, but so the Lambda, the logs for monitor.
Okay.
No, monitor.
So,
we can just refresh this monitor. We would see that it so if you scroll down.
so here you can see some metrics here that the Lambda got triggered, right? So if you want to see the logs, you will have to configure a logs for it. I don't think it will automatically show up there. I think you have to create a log group for it, for you to be able to
automatically
see.
does.
No,
Really?
it doesn't. Yeah. So you can
Oh,
see.
because yeah, we didn't use the default Lambda permission. Because if you use the default Lambda permission, he automatically creates the
Oh, I see.
permission for you. Yeah. So we
Oh,
created
okay.
Okay, that's yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah. So that I didn't even know. So you can, so all we have to do is if we want to create a log group, right? We can just create a log group with this name. What is the default Lambda? What does that one have? Let me see here.
Create a new, so the when we create a new row with the basic permissions, it includes permission for CloudWatch.
Yeah, I just want to test it and see. Test. Yeah, I want to see what is in the default row that Lambda creates. Where's a new basic Lambda permission?
Yeah, we can just create and then we'll see once it's created, we check the permissions. See, it has Amazon CloudWatch logs permission there. So yeah, so create log stream and pull log stream log events.
Okay, on this name. All right, so I can do this. Right. I just want to let me take a screenshot of this so I can see what the policy looks like. I'm going to move this to the side, and where is my Lambda function? So my Lambda function is here, configuration, permissions, row. Going to the permission. I just do it in line.
So I think we can just add the policy into the user that we created for your Lambda function. So this AWS Lambda basic execution role, I think there's probably a policy for it that we can just add it.
Yeah, so that's why I'm not sure what that policy is called. Let me just do CloudWatch. It's probably like some basic policy.
Yeah, it's a basic one.
All right, let me see. Yeah, I'm just going to back out. Continue.
So if we go to the add permission,
Type policy,
add that policy.
CloudWatch. Okay, let me try log group and see what can log.
Can you try Lambda? So that's a AWS Lambda basic execution role. So just before the one you created, before the customer managed one.
Where is it? I can see.
No, down, yeah, down. Yep. No, that one more.
Oh, okay, this one. All right. Okay. So
if we do another test now, it's probably going to write to.
Yes, since I'll probably have to create the log string too. The log group. I mean, so
I think the permission automatically creates it. So if you go to the screenshot you had, you'd see it has permission to create log group. So I think it does it automatically.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Let me test it again. I'm just going to launch another EC2 instance. And okay. So the EC2 instances are here. Well, without that one that I selected. So you can see them here. They are, and you can see right off the bat, they are shutting down. So right now, the EC2 instances I just launched are now shutting down. Let me go to the Lambda function. Here, monitoring, view log rules. Okay, I did create it. So this is the latest one I ran. And so that is what it is saying. So initial, it is always this. This is the report of the Lambda function that ran. So it doesn't really, that's what I'm saying. It won't give you detail of what it did particularly, but it will just show you what it, like whether it was successful. And if there was a failure, it might give you some, but it wouldn't have like give you details of those EC2 instances. Okay. So if you guys want to configure if you want to configure your Lambda function to create log group, log group is good for troubleshooting. So sometimes you may deploy your Lambda function and it may fail for some reason. Maybe it could be because your code does not have access to the particular service you are trying to run. It could fail. So that way, if that happens, you can use your logs to troubleshoot the Lambda function. But in terms of like the IDs of the EC2 instance and all the other things that it did, it wouldn't probably, I don't think it will show you here. If I click on this drop down, yeah, this just has the request ID, the duration that it took for the code to run.
Can you click on the stats? Sorry, can you click on the stats to see what if it's printing anything there?
Where?
So the second option.
This?
No. You know what we are looking at now? We're looking at the last one. Can we click on the second timestamp? The second message. Yeah.
This one?
The second one, the one after this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think the logs always go they go from up down. So if you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe if you are looking at the timestamp here, right? You can see that the time is increasing. So, and I may be wrong, but I believe when you are checking it, don't you always check like the one at the bottom, or is it this one? Because this is like the initial start
That's
time.
the start, yeah.
And this is where, when it gave you the report after it was run. Yeah. Okay. So that is pretty much what I wanted to share with you guys here. I mean, we did something with, we did something with security groups. A good place that I can see them implementing this, or something you can try, is you can also do it with AMI, right? Or you can also do it with instance type. Maybe you don't want engineers to use a certain instance type in your account. You can do something like, you can implement something like this. There might probably be other ways to implement restricting the engineers to be able to use an EC2 instance with a particular instance type. But for now, for the main purpose of this project is we are not trying to focus on why we would do something, but for me, it's just how to do it, and pretty much the process of referencing the documentation and things like that. So that's one of my main goals for this project. So that is pretty much it. I have the code now, the code works. So we've tested the code for when we launch an EC2 instance that SSH is open to the world, and the EC2 instance gets terminated. What if I launch an EC2 instance that SSH is not open to the world? Let's test that. So I'm going to call this my name. And here I'm going to select my AMI instance type, key pair. And here I'm going to have SSH rule, but instead of opening to the world, I'm going to limit it to my IP. And here I'm going to launch 3 EC2 instances and click launch instance. I have the 3 EC2 instance here. Going to select the ID, remove the filter. Then I'm just going to filter this by instances running, so we won't see the other ones. Well, I'll remove it for now because the state is still pending. You can see them here. Refresh. They are running. The other one is pending. Now all of them are running. Can filter it by instance state equals to running. You can see it here. The Lambda function did not get triggered, and the Lambda function did get triggered. I'm sorry. It gets triggered, it ran the code, but the condition we specified in our code did not meet what would allow the code to terminate the EC2 instance. This EC2 instance I just launched, even though I am opening SSH port, I am not opening it to the world. So that is why even though the code ran, the EC2 instance are not terminated, because that is the logic we wrote in the code. So just as much as when you test your code for when it terminates your EC2 instance, you should also test it. What if you run another EC2 instance that meets the conditions you want? Then those EC2 instances should be running. And that's what you are seeing here.
Can we do a test and add the because we can still add once an instance is running, we're able to add a security group to that instance. Can we do a test and see if it's gonna,
That's it. Yes, that is I don't think the code is going to run, because our trigger is based on if Our trigger is based on when the EC2 instance state is changing to running. But the next time our code run, yes, it will terminate the EC2 instance, so we can test it. I can probably pick 2 of these EC2 instances. Actions, security. But I guess I can do 2 at a time. So I'll pick 1. Security, change security. How about these ones that I've launched? Let me see which one. I'm not sure. I'll just add this one and see what this has. Let's see. That's the one to my IP. Why did I accidentally pick? Oh, am I picking? Let me see, check it from here. I'm just going to change it. I don't know which one because I was just creating a default one. So I'm just going to create a security group. Security group here. Create. Search. Default VPC. Default VPC, right? And yeah, I'll pick SSH. Open to anywhere, so that way I know that is the one. And for my well, I don't even think did I add the other one? I don't think I did. Okay, so I've updated 2 of my EC2 instances to have SSH open to the world. It is not going to trigger the Lambda function because the Lambda function trigger is based on when the state of the EC2 instance is changing to running. But my theory is that the next time I launch another EC2 instance that triggers the Lambda function, the ones that I modify will be deleted. So let's test it. I'm going to write test here. And
Aziz,
yes.
can we have more than one trigger for the same Lambda code?
Oh, excuse me.
Can we have more than one trigger? Because right now the trigger is when the state changed to running. So can we have more than one?
That I have to look. I'm not sure if you can have more than one trigger for a Lambda function. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Let me look it up. Well, let me finish this one, then I'll look it up. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But that's a good idea. But obviously our code, the basics of our code is just to do certain things. I mean, it's not, the main point of this project is just to do something script-wise. If you guys are implementing it in your account, you would have to account for, how different things in your account, right? You could have another code that checks that when there's a security group change. I know in our account, when there's a security group change, we will get an alert telling us like this particular security group has been modified. Or so there's more logic you can always add to the code to check for different things you are trying to check for. So which is what we didn't include in this code. The main point of this project is just to do something that works. So here I'm going to open the security group to the world.
And my last question, what we are doing now, we can still be able to achieve the same result if we use config. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
So I've launched the EC2 instance with SSH open to the world. That EC2 instance is shutting down. And if I remove this, the other two that I modify is also shutting down. So the code works where it pretty much scans for the security groups, but the good question you guys brought up is, okay, what if someone modified the security group? Then that will be based on when the code runs again, right? It will terminate it. But if it's something you are trying to trigger immediately, then we can have like a schedule trigger instead of like an event trigger. We can have like a schedule trigger that runs at certain times of the day. So there are just different ways you can do it, but that's kind of like beyond the scope of this project. So you guys can always take this project, expand on it, and see how you can make it better, where you can just use it to do specific things in your account. But just to keep it on a simple level, this is what we are doing with the code. So let me look up, can I have multiple? Yes, Lambda function can have multiple triggers. A trigger is a source that allows another AWS service to invoke a function when certain conditions or event occurs. When a Lambda function is created, only one trigger can be specified. However, more triggers can be added to the Lambda function later using the Lambda function console or editing the distribution of the distribution in the CloudFront console. There's no limit to the number of triggers that can be added to a single Lambda function. So it is saying that, yes, according to this AWS documentation, you can add multiple triggers to the Lambda function. But I'm not sure what the next trigger would be. So, but again, I don't want to spend too much time on
yeah, thank you.
checking for like the different conditions, but you guys can work on that and just use it as like a practice to improve on the code if you want to. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So, but at least let's look at if I want to, oh yes, it does say right here, though. So if you want to add another trigger, it is right there under the trigger. You can add, but then it will just be based on, it will be based on what type of trigger you want to add. This could be like an SNS, maybe something when the security, something changes, right? you get notified and you can trigger it based on that. So let me see if there's another EventBridge for. So this is when, if you want to trigger it based on like just a time, right? So you can add another trigger that triggers it based on time. So here we have auto scaling. So there's one for RDS, EC2. So there isn't nothing here that will fit that logic we want with the security group being modified, but I can see us using this AWS API call via CloudTrail, because when you so you can see here, right? It could be something along the lines of security groups here. So let me see. But this will be when security group is created, not when it is added to the EC2 instance. So, but yes, that's a different logic where you just have to either work that logic into your code or look for a way to trigger your code when a security group for an EC2 instance gets modified. So once you are done with this code, if you want to delete everything, you can start with your Lambda function. So here, I'll go back to my Lambda function. Here, I'm just going to select the Lambda function and delete it. Yeah, type delete. Close. Delete this one too while I'm here. Then you can delete the IAM row as well. I call it check history. Yeah, those are the two resources we created for this project that you can delete. If you also want to delete the S3 bucket that you uploaded the code in, you can delete the S3 bucket, but I'll just leave the code in there for your reference. When you work on this project, you can leave the code in your S3 bucket for your reference. Later on, you can always have it there to reference. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for that project. Do you guys have any questions on that project? And if not, we can move on to helping you guys troubleshoot for today. Okay, so that is it for that one, that project. Like I said, the next project I want to work on is something with generative AI, but I haven't really figured out exactly what problem we will be solving with it. So I'm still doing some research on it now. It is something you guys can also work on too. So AWS has a service called Amazon Bedrock, and it is for the generative AI. So you guys can come to this documentation, just read about it, read about the different things it can do. So it's just kind of like ChatGPT, like it has different models that can do different things, right? So just kind of read the documentation just to understand how it works. Then we can brainstorm, what type of project we can do with generative AI. that AWS offer. There's so many different things we can do with it. But again, when you are working on your project, it is good to just keep it simple to at least understand how to use it and how to configure things. Then you can always take what you've done and expand on it. So I would like to do the next project on this service. So that's one thing I'm looking into. And this would probably be something where they will start asking you to require on for job in the future. So rather than waiting, it's good to just be a couple of steps ahead and start doing some projects on it. Okay. So that is pretty much it for the project part. Does anyone have any questions, or do you want me to help you troubleshoot anything? I'm not sure if anyone is talking, but I can't hear you. In case you are.
Hey, Asif, thank you so much for the whole thing, and also I'm looking forward to the AI project, because just this morning I was going through the social media and I started reading so many discussion on even AI nurse. So, like you said, it will be better to be some steps ahead before they start requesting for this knowledge or this skill. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. So and maybe in the meantime, while you guys are reading the documentation, you can send me a message on Slack, or you guys can just post it in our Slack group of like different things we can do with AI. So don't pick something that is like requires 10 years of work, or I don't mean 10 years of work, like requires like heavy lifting to do, but just on a basic level, simple things we can do. It could be, we've just done something with security with this Python project. One idea I had is, I'm not necessarily sure if I want to, and I'll test it out at some point. One idea I had is, in our code here, when let me clear all the output. When we make the initial when we make the initial request to AWS, right? And here we get the response. This is the response AWS gives us for the security group, right? And this is what's in the response. Then in this response, we only need the group ID. That's all we need here. We need the group ID. We need the group ID and also check whether it has SSH open to the world. Those are the things we need, right? What if there's a way when we get this response, instead of us writing the code to do all that stuff, we can just use generative AI to get that information out of this file and put it in the list that we expect. So when we run this, right, we keep running we wrote all this to filter that file until we got to this point. So what if what if am I trying? What if once we make the first request and we get the first response, the whole part of doing the work and extracting the data that we want into this list, right? What if we use generative AI to do that part? Does that make sense? I don't know. It's just an idea. So that's one thing that I was thinking about. Or we can do something else with, maybe we haven't done something with data. So we can do something with getting the data from somewhere, manipulating the data to do one particular thing and moving the data somewhere else. So I don't know, but I haven't necessarily think of what cool projects we can do with the generative AI, but that was just an idea. So, but I'll keep thinking about it and I'll read more through the AWS documentation to see what the code can do, what the bedrock, what the capabilities are. But that's not something, like I said, this project part, I will only be more interested to work on it because I'm looking for people that I can collaborate with for those of you that are advanced, that know what you are doing, to work with, right? I don't want it to be something where I'm just pretty much configuring it and you guys are just watching. No. So I want it to be more something that's more of like a collaborative effort. Because if it's just going to be me sitting, I always feel like sitting here and teaching you guys stuff doesn't really work, especially if it is something that I'm just telling you click here and click there. I want to make the experience as close to what you'll see at work, because when you guys are troubleshooting at work or when you are working on any type of project, it would be more of a collaborative effort as opposed to one person just showing you what to do. So I want to make it as close to that as possible. Okay, so that is pretty much it. Does anyone need any help before we end today's call? Because I think Sonny said he needs help. I'm not sure, Sonny, if you're still here. Okay, well, so that's pretty much it for today's class. If you guys need help or you need me to help you troubleshoot anything, please feel free to message me on Slack. And Wahab, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask the code, this check SG code. What do you have it? Is it in the Slack group, or where can we get access to it?
I typically don't give you guys the code because I want you guys to write it, but I'll give you. I know you know what you're doing. I'll send the code to you. But the video is there on YouTube. You guys can watch it and write your own code, right? That's the point of the project. I'm not referring to you, Wahab. I'm just saying, like, for anyone else, that if you want to work on the project, the point of it is for you to be able to work on it and understand it. So you won't learn much if I just give you the code and I know the code works. So if you run it in your account, it's going to work too. So I am doing you a disservice by giving you my code. But Wahab, I'll send you the code. And for those that are here, I'll put it in the Slack channel. But I encourage you guys to at least complete the project and try to understand how we got to the point of where we got to with this code. And also, you might want the code because you want to expand on it. That is also fine. But I'm just saying, don't cheat yourself by just using my code.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just actually trying to do the test for when it changes, because I think I found something.
Okay, sure.
You said the CloudTrail API, so I found what Scully makes, and I'm just trying to see if that works.
Okay, sure. I'll send the code to you now. Do you want me to send you the Python zip file? I'll just send you everything.
You can just send it. And based on my findings, I can just put it in the chat that this is a modification we can make. And
okay, sure. I'll post it in the group thing now. So this is the Jupyter notebook and this is the zip file. Yeah, I've sent it in Slack. Thank you, Wally.
Aziz, can I hang on for 2 minutes after this class?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
A quick one. Did Wahab say that he found something on the log while running it, or what?
No, he said.
You know what? If I can actually share my screen and show you what I found and what I'm actually testing.
Okay, sure.
That's okay. Settings. Oh no, I have to quit. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
So I'll just cancel. If I go to EC2, have a sample instance running here, tests. And if I change the security group, let's just say I add a default security group to it. And I didn't even expect that this was what the trail was going to be called. I noticed that the two instance details is providing me in this network interface.
Yes, exactly.
And when I click save, I notice it says security group for ENI that's successfully changed.
Okay.
So then when I now go to CloudTrail to see what API, what events,
that way, yeah,
it pushes, it's called modify network interface attributes. It takes a bit of time to register, but this is what it's called. And we can see the resource references.
Yeah.
When you change the security group, it records it as modify network interface attributes.
Okay.
So now if we go to events, I'm just going to copy this. If we go to EventBridge and we create a new event rule. So based on a pattern, and we use pattern. So the service would be CloudTrail. Event type would be AWS cover. Then specific operations would now be, it will be the
name of the event.
This.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna note this.
I guess you can add multiple to it.
Yeah, so it's gonna be that, and if we go next, so and then we can actually hook it up to the Lambda function.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Do you want to? Well, I already deleted mine. I would have done it, but
next, and then once we have that, we can. It's automatically hooks it up to the Lambda function.
Oh, I see.
Change the security group. It
Perfect.
should trigger. Yeah.
Perfect. So this is, thank you so much. So this is this would definitely work, right? And one thing I like about this is now we don't really have to modify the code and try to add more logic to the code. So the code is fine the way we have it. We are just covering different scenarios that can happen, which even when I was talking about, when I was just coming up with this project, again, I was only thinking about the approach of let's just do something cool. But I wasn't thinking of the different scenarios that Wahab brought up, Titus brought up, of what if this happened, what will happen. So this is good that you can come up with different ways to trigger your Lambda function. So that way you don't have to modify the logic of your code. That's very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Wahab.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out too later. Troubleshooting. Yes, Sonny, I can just ping me later on today when you are home. I'll come online. So don't worry about troubleshooting now. If you're at work, we can do it later. Yeah, I should be online later on today. All right. Does anyone else need help with anything before we end today's class? All right, cool. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys throughout the week and next week. And I'm just going to, Wahab, Adewale, you guys, all of you guys really know what you are doing with stuff. So definitely start thinking along the line of doing a project in with generative AI. I know Frank is also interested. So if you guys want us to, you guys can think of different ideas of a cool project we can do, then we'll do research on it and we'll start working on it. And if anyone also has any idea on that, just you guys post it in the Slack channel. We'll pick one cool project we can do. And let's also pick a project that is based around problem solving. what is the problem we are trying to solve? Because as a cloud engineer, that's really all you are always doing. What's the problem and how can we solve that problem using generative AI? So I think if we work on a project like that, that would be very cool. And it would definitely be something that would look very good on your resume. So let's work on something in that aspect. All right. I would see you guys next week then, and I'll talk to some of you throughout the week. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
No problem. Bye.